Hello and welcome to the Creative Soul Summit. I'm your host, Devin Walls, abstract painter, creative guide, and a true believer in the transformative power of making art. I've gathered 20 women from all different creative fields to talk about how their creative journey has changed their life, how they stay inspired, how they deal with self-doubt, and all things self-discovery, freedom, and healing through art. Today I'm talking with Tracy Verdugo, and for those of you who don't already know Tracy, if she was given the opportunity to coin a term for a new art movement based around what she teaches, she might call it curiosity and wonderism, or maybe loosen upism, or endless possibilitism. Tracy is an inspiration instigator, prolific painter, singer-songwriter, and lover of the written word, smitten traveler, and soaker up of all that is beautiful. She teaches her Paint Mojo and other creative workshops all over this amazing planet and reminds her students of the wonder that already resides within them. Her works are vibrant and filled with joy, inspired by wanderlust, diversity, and the beauty of everyday life. Since 2000, Tracy has held 16 successful solo exhibitions, and her works are held in collections, both in Australia and internationally. Mostly, though, she is a mama bear to two gorgeous, zest-filled daughters, Santana and Sienna, and co-adventurer in life with her amour of 32 years, the talented and brilliant Marco. Tracy is such a vibrant person, full of inspiration and wisdom from her years of teaching, and I can't wait to share this with you. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Tracy Verdugo. Hello everyone, we're back on the Creative Soul Summit, and today I'm here with Tracy Verdugo, which I'm really excited about because her book was one of the first art books that I got. I've been following her work for a while, so I'm super excited to have her on. Thanks so much for being here, Tracy.
Hey, Devin. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be chatting with you as well.
Awesome. So just to start us off, would you kind of share a little bit about your journey and how you became an artist and how you started working intuitively in this way?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's a long journey. How long do we have?
Yeah.
Like it's for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Look, growing up, I really didn't have any inclination to, well, I did. I had an inclination to paint and draw when I was a kid, but I thought that I sucked, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so I had a brother who was super talented and he could, sketch and draw. He did all these great things. And so I compared myself to him and then found myself lacking. And so for a lot of years, I just didn't do anything with paint or drawing. And it wasn't until I was 33 that I had a 3-year-old at the time, and she had started preschool one morning a week. And it just so happened that in the local paper, I saw an art class advertised at that exact time. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to do it. And it was probably 2 weeks into that class that I walked out into the street, and suddenly it was really like I had new eyes. I could see light and reflection, shadow, and I would look at people's faces and see things that I'd never. My eyes were opened, basically, and that was the beginning. So that was like almost 20 years ago now, since then it's just been this exciting kind of up, down, all around adventure of learning, really, and I think it will go on forever. I think that you will never stop learning if you begin to create.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
totally. I totally hear you in that. Like when I started making art, I feel like my life really started to kind of light up, and it really sounds like you had that experience as well, which is really interesting. And then I also know that you transitioned into also teaching, like workshops, and you wrote a book. And so, what kind of sparked that, and how did that transition, or how did you start doing that?
Yeah, so look, I think I'm a natural born teacher. I was the kid that at the family barbecues, I'd gather all the other kids into a room and I'd tell them to sit down and, I'd make a blackboard and, I go, okay, today what we're going to learn is,
Right.
So I was always doing that kind of thing. So when I started this once a week art class, like 20 years ago, I would come home and I would gather my girls and then some of their friends, and I would basically kind of rehash whatever it was that I had learned that day and then put it in kid language and then make it fun and do something with the kids. So that kind of transitioned into nearly 15 years of teaching after school kids classes. And it got pretty big. I live in a very small town, like there's 1,000 people here.
Okay.
And so I had just about every kid in town coming to my art classes, one afternoon a week. And it was fantastic and I loved it. And I think that a lot of what I learnt from the kids has come through into the way I teach adults. And just been really a beautiful journey there. So round about 2011, actually a little bit before, I began to notice that there were people out there teaching adult classes, and workshops specifically. And my husband and I, our whole family love to travel. And he's actually originally from close by you, and also Mexico. He has family in Mexico as well. So we've done a lot of traveling over the years. And I've always kind of had this little thing in my mind, like one day I'm going to find a way to put together travel and teaching and painting and kind of build this creative life that is, this dream life. And so it's taken a while, but I'm here, and so I think sometimes you plant these small seeds, and then they germinate, they cross-pollinate, they find their own way, they move through and they find a way to create what it is that you are intending.
That's really cool. I love that. And I really think that planting seeds, like you're talking about, that really does something. Like if you go back and look in old journals, you're like, wow, I'm doing that now. And it's just, it's amazing.
Absolutely. Hey, one story, like way back 2008, I actually bought my first art book, and it was a book called Art Escapes by Dori Cantor, who's an artist from Portland.
Okay.
And I used it to kind of, there were little exercises in there that I could work with the kids. And there was one chapter in there, and she was talking about how she was going to Italy and she was taking a group and they were walking along the Amalfi Coast and sketching. I remember vividly running inside to my husband and saying, oh my God, this is a thing. People do this, right?
Yeah, totally.
This is what people can do. And the girls were little at the time. So it was like, I knew that it wouldn't be something I could do until they were older, until they were teenagers and had left home, which they both now have. Well, one is back right now. But, so it is. It's like, and then I remember looking on the back of that book to see who the publishers were. And it was Northlight Publishers. And that's who I eventually had my book published by. And, so like all of those little things you look back and you go, that was when that seed was planted.
Wow, that is cool. Yeah, that's amazing. So interesting. So I'm curious about, teaching these workshops, and I just imagine that when you step into teaching your process, like to other adults, that you would probably realize things about the way you create, and there would be this like learning through seeing other people, step into their creative power. So I'm wondering a couple of things. One is, what have you found that your students seem to struggle with the most, like when they come into your workshops, and then like how have you helped move them through that?
Yeah, okay. So you're absolutely correct. The first thing I say to my students when we're together in a circle at the beginning of a workshop is that, we're here as a creative community for the weekend or the week, and that I am about to learn as much from them as hopefully they are from me, right? Because there's 20 to 40 paintings that are going to be created.
Right.
And we're all going to be looking at each other's work and going, oh my God, how did you do that? What happened there? What are those two colors that you used? And so I really encourage everyone to be inspired by each other. So I would say the two things that probably pop up the most are expectation. So having an expectation that you're going to come to a class and you've already got the spot on your wall. And this happened to me with a beautiful group in Sweden. And the Swedish women are like highly accomplished and like really driven. And my host, she said to me, I have a couple friends coming, they've never painted before. They're like, high rollers in the corporate world, and like they're really accomplished. And they've already picked out the spot on the wall that their masterpiece is going to go at the end of the workshop.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
It's like, whoo, okay, we need to have a chat, right, at the beginning of the class. And so I ended up, and there was a little bit of a meltdown that happened with one of the women because what she was creating didn't match up to what she had in her head, but she'd never painted before.
Right.
And Yeah, yeah. And it was a really emotional thing for her to go through. And I remember saying to the whole class that if you had come like to learn Italian for the weekend, right, and you'd never spoken any Italian before, and then you went home and you weren't fluent, you wouldn't beat yourself up. You know, you wouldn't say, "Oh my God, I'm hopeless because I can't speak fluent Italian." Right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah. So I think one of the things I always say is that on a personal level, if I go to a workshop, I am happy if I take one little thing home, one little small thing. It could be something that the instructor said, it could be a technique, it could be a personal epiphany that I had, it could be anything. But one take home is enough for me because then that adds to your learning base, it adds to everything else that you've learned, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so
And then the other
interesting.
thing, sorry.
No, I was just
And
saying
the
that's
other
interesting. Go
thing,
ahead.
the other thing is the comparison thing. You
Hmm.
know, just don't, just don't do it. You know? We've got like, there's such a gift in our diversity. There's such a gift in everything we have that makes us different from everybody else. Um, so why would we compare ourselves to anybody when we're all at such a different stage in our own evolution? And yeah, so I think I address those things by actually literally addressing them right at the beginning of the workshop. And
Mm.
then revisiting. If I see it pop up throughout the room, then we'll just revisit, you know? Yeah.
Right, absolutely. That's so interesting. So, what would you say, for you on the teaching end of it is the most rewarding part about taking these
Mm,
students through this journey?
yeah. I love the breakthroughs.
Mm.
I love it when I see somebody actually that didn't believe in themselves suddenly open up a little doorway to change that. You know, they have some kind of, they do something in the workshop that they really didn't think they were capable of doing, whatever it is.
Right.
And suddenly it's like, whoa, their bubble of possibility just got a little bit bigger, you know, and they've got somewhere to move to from there. That's the most rewarding thing for me, I think. Yeah. And also
Yeah.
community, like our community is freaking amazing, right? It just like the people that we have in our online creative sphere and the way that we interact together and support each other,
Hmm.
that just fills my heart every time.
Yeah, that's been the most rewarding thing for me in doing this series as well. And talking to so many creative women is like you just feel so much more connected, even in this online space. And that's been really cool. So I can imagine spending a week or a weekend together would really bring
Yeah,
that in. Yeah, that's amazing.
absolutely. Yeah, and it goes on, you know, like once you've met these people in a physical space, real friendships are formed. And, you know, when we travel now, my husband and I, we can kind of, you know, we've got places to stay all over the world with friends, you know, they're like, come stay with
Right.
us, come to Sweden, you know, so it makes the
Totally.
world a lot smaller.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super cool. Um,
Yeah.
so something that you touched on in what you were saying is this comparison factor.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's something I think I've heard you say is, let what you're inspired by kind of like inform your style and embrace it. And I'm wondering if you
Yeah,
can speak to that because I know that I feel very self-conscious when I feel overly inspired by someone. Like I feel
right.
very
Yeah,
aware that I don't want to take anything,
yeah,
but it becomes hard because you resonate. So
absolutely.
so yeah, I'm wondering if
Absolutely.
you could speak to that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll take you back to 2011, and I actually had an artist come out from the United States, Flora Bowley,
Oh yeah.
and it was the first workshop that I had ever been to, and I love her work. Her work is amazing, and I truly opened up in that workshop. Like there were just things that I hadn't even thought of, you know, like a spray bottle. I'd
Yeah.
never used a spray bottle at that point, you know, like
Yeah.
silly things. And I'm like, whoa, how come I never thought to do that, right? And
Hmm.
so there were some things that really changed in my work at that time. And I was excited. I was over the moon. I was like really posting images here, you know, left, right, and center. And along the way, you know, I started getting comparisons to the point where it actually felt icky. It felt like, wait a minute, I'm not so excited now. I was so excited that I learned all this new stuff, but now I don't want to be another, you know, Flora, or to encroach, or to feel like I'm, you know, like you're saying, overly inspired.
Yeah.
And it was probably a good 12 months of me trying to work through that and trying to figure out how do you find your own voice within, you know, all of the inspiration that's out there and all of these beautiful images that we're looking at. It can get downright confusing, you know. It's like, oh yeah, I really like that, and I like that, and I like that, I like that. And it took a day where I actually went out to my studio, and I had finished a painting that was, you know, quite Flora-esque, Flora-inspired, and I kind of felt like, you know what, I need something big to happen right now. And I noticed a bottle of white paint that I had out for a kids class. And I actually got the white paint and I started squirting it all over this finished painting, not to obliterate it, just to make a different move, just to do something different.
Yeah.
And then I started kind of moving it around with my hands. I started scratching through and letting bits peek through. And at the same time, I was working on my fine arts degree, and I was trying to envision doing this body of work about the universe because I don't pick small subjects.
Right.
And it was like the microcosm and the macrocosm, how when you look inside or you look out to the universe, everything is the same, right? So I started making these little cellular bubbles, these little bubbly things, and something different emerged from that day, like a whole new direction and series and style emerged. It came from frustration. It came from that place of feeling ick, and from struggle, right? And I think, you know, you've got to go through it to figure out what it is that's you. So that was, you know, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting. She's actually in this series. I'm a big fan of her work as well. Yeah. And
awesome.
She is somebody that, alongside with your book, that I discovered her work around the same time. And I had a similar experience where I was using her approach as a way to teach myself. And I totally had many moments as well of questioning whether my work looked so much like hers. So that's really interesting, actually, with the same artist. But yeah. So what would you recommend for somebody who is feeling overly inspired? How can we take what we're inspired by, but make it our own at the same time? How would you advise your students to that?
So in hindsight, and so I have to say now that, like, at the time, I felt like I hadn't even started teaching. I was teaching my, you know, kids classes and some adult classes in this little town that I live in. At the time, I didn't really understand a lot about the way that we create our art or share our art or how we're inspired, or even this whole new online arena that we have, right? And so in hindsight, I would say, and I would say to myself, going back, don't be so excited to share every single new thing that you are learning, especially when you're learning from someone else. You know what I mean? When you're feeling that moment, be a little more in your cocoon, be a little more in your studio. And I know it's hard because we get like, I'm proud, I want to show it, you know.
Totally.
But I would say, like, have a little restraint in that time that you're learning. And what I find I do now, especially if I'm in a mode where I'm trying to figure out how a particular artist works, because that's what we do, right? You know, we're like, how did they do that? You know, like, okay. So I'll do all that in the privacy of my own studio. I don't need to show anyone that. And then most often, if I figure something out, I'll actually sometimes even just come in with a viewfinder and crop those paintings into smaller kind of pieces so they become backgrounds that I can then move forward, you know, to put in my own voice on top of it so that it doesn't come out as recognizably, you know, overly influenced by someone else. So a little restraint, I think, is probably, and just acknowledging that there's a time for learning and then there's a time for, like, putting it out there.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. That's really good advice about being in your own cocoon because you're right, especially with social media. It's like you want to
Yeah.
share so bad, but I think
Yeah.
that's what brings on like kind of the icky feelings that you were talking about too. So it's like if
Yeah.
you can just stay on your own, it protects that a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, that's really good advice.
Yeah.
So I'm curious just like about your own creative process. What have you found to be the most challenging aspect in creating for yourself?
Yeah. Um, for me, I think because I have my fingers in a lot of pies, because I'm teaching online, I'm teaching in person, and I'm trying to have my own practice,
Hmm.
and I have a family, and we have a life, you know,
Yeah,
like everyone, right?
right.
Um, I think, you know, there's this idealized notion that we can get out in the studio 8 hours a day, 5 days a week,
Yeah.
and that doesn't happen for me. So balance is the thing that I struggle with the most, and even things like exercising. You
Yeah.
know, like when you could choose to get up and you've got a certain amount of hours and you could head straight to the studio, or you could go for a walk on the beach, or you could do some yoga.
Hmm.
It's all like, which one will I do?
Yeah.
And then suddenly you've got 50 emails to answer as well, you
Yeah.
know, and a
Right.
blog post to write. So balance is the thing that I'm struggling with the most
Mm.
still. I have this intention that I do want to switch like I'm teaching probably 70% of my business time is teaching time
Hmm.
and probably 30% painting time.
Hmm.
And ideally, in the next few years, I'd like to switch that so that teaching will become a little more exclusive
Hmm.
and painting will be more, so I'll be kind of, yeah, in my painting zone more often. That's what I'm working towards.
Yeah, I was talking to another artist I had on here who's a friend of mine who also teaches, and she was saying that when you teach, that pendulum kind of swings back and forth. Like you go through seasons where you're like, I kind of just want to do my own work, and then seasons where you're very
Right.
out. And so I could totally see that.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Absolutely. And see, when I'm always trying to create new content for classes as well. And so when I'm doing that, I'm deliberately exploring new directions. And then that
Mm,
kind of gets a little confusing because I'm like, oh, I really liked what I did there. Should I go off in that direction? You know, wait a
right.
minute. No, too many things going on at the one time, you know. So that focus of attention and just feeling a little scattered is, you know, that's the challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Totally. So, also, like, kind of talking about your own work, I know that, I don't know how recent this is, but I know you have, I think it's a course out called like Fascination or
Face
Fascination.
fascination.
Face
Yeah.
Fascination. I was like, is it one word? Okay. And I was just kind of reading a little bit about it, how, like we're attracted to faces since we're young, and that's
Mhm.
kind of led you to do this
Yeah.
exploration. So I'm wondering, I think that's so interesting. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that and how that started to kind of grab you.
Yeah, one of my earliest memories is being probably like 5 or 6, and we had this big old dusty book on the shelves, you know, that at home, and it was called something like People of the World or Peoples of the World.
Hmm.
And I would sit there for hours and look at these big black and white photos of people with all different color. Well, you couldn't tell their color skin, but you could tell, you know, dark and light skin,
Hmm.
and, you know, bones through their noses and big hoop earrings through, you know, long neck, you know, all of these kind of tribal people. And just, I was fascinated. I was just like, who are you? And what is your life like? And where do you live? And so, in the same way, you know, I love Humans of New York and all of
Oh yeah.
those. I'm just so intrigued by people's stories.
Hmm.
And yeah, and faces, you know, I like, you can sit in a mall and just watch all the different faces go by and the shapes and the sizes and the different proportions and it's just like, whoa, we're really, you know, humanity is really diverse. And so that fascination has been with me since I was a kid.
Mm.
And when I first started painting, well, actually, I worked a lot with pastels, with soft pastels,
Hmm.
way back at the beginning. And the first things I loved to do were portraits.
Mm.
So I did a lot of portraits in those first few years when I was learning. And so this is kind of coming back around. And I've also had this real desire to learn how to marry abstract backgrounds with more realistic portraiture. So
Mm.
that's kind of the direction I've been heading in for a few years now in
Okay.
my own working space,
Okay. Cool.
exploring that. Yeah, yeah. So this
Yeah.
class is like a little bit of a teaser of what I've been exploring for myself.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, I love that because I hadn't really
Yeah.
thought about that whole faces concept until I read that. And, when I was first learning, I was really drawn to doing portraits as well. And I remember when I would get into them, I started to really develop like an appreciation for how difficult it
Yes.
was. Something about like the human face
Yes.
to me was like so challenging. And I didn't know why. It's not like drawing a bookshelf, and, but also the appreciation aspect. So that really speaks to me. I think that's really cool.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
another thing I wanted to ask is, I think there's a lot of people out there who feel that they're really creative, but they're either really busy in their life or they're feeling really timid or afraid to creating feels scary to them. And what
Mm,
advice would you give to somebody who wants to start a creative practice but doesn't have one yet?
yeah. I guess we do have to juggle what's going on in our life at any particular time, right? And
Mm,
so I think being gentle with yourself is always the best way to go, So if you have
yeah,
small children, whatever, maybe all you can do is snatch, like an hour a week,
yeah,
but make a commitment to do that hour. And even if you don't have the money to sign up for classes, there's so much on YouTube too,
oh yeah,
like just jump on there and just look up, like whatever it is you want to find out. Or this week I want to know a little bit more about mixed media, or this week I want to see how to sketch a face, or whatever. You
mm-hmm.
just Google it and it's there. So, just make the commitment to put aside as little or as much time as you can within your busy life to actually pursue what it is that you want to do. And I think also, um, it doesn't have to be specifically art oriented. Start thinking about your home and what kind of a space you want to create, or your meals, like bring creativity
Yeah,
into other areas as well. Flowers in the house, and if you have a garden, like um, getting your creative muscles moving doesn't just have to be about painting.
mm.
It can be about all areas of your life.
Absolutely, totally. I totally agree. And as you were saying that too, I kind of had this thought like, yeah, because when we're being creative with something that we have to do all the time, which is eat, it's like we're kind of bringing
Right?
life into it. And I think that's the like healing
Yes.
part about being creative anyway. So
Yes.
yeah, that's
Yeah, for
amazing.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, before I ask the last question, first I just want to acknowledge you and say thank you so much for being here. I love just like how lively and inspired of a person you are. I think that really comes off, and it comes off in your work and in your book and in your teaching. So, I really appreciate the work that you do. I think that's really, really
Thank
amazing.
you, Jen. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. So, where can people find you, and do you have anything coming up that you'd like to talk about? This is actually coming out within 7 to 10 days, so pretty soon here.
Yep. Hey, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You can find me at tracyverdugo.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and all of those are just under my name.
Okay.
And then I also have another group on Facebook called Love Art Inspiration with Tracy Verdugo, and that's one where I post a fair bit as well. And then Face Fascination class is running again in
Cool.
January. And so I'll be opening early bird registration for that next month, so November. So that's coming up pretty soon. Yeah, so
Awesome.
that's about it.
Cool. I will link to all that below this video.
Fantastic. Yay.
So, the final question is, what do you love about being an artist?
Freedom was the first word that came into my mind.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, like the freedom to, my husband and I were just talking about it yesterday, and we're like, we don't have to get up to an alarm clock. We don't have to like go somewhere to work. We can have a walk on the beach first. We can kind of, if you feel like making a mosaic, you can make a mosaic. If you feel like painting, you can do that. So yeah, the freedom to kind of create whatever it is that you want to create in your life is like, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
big one. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. I totally resonate with the freedom answer too. I think that's my favorite thing as well. So beautiful answer. Yes. And thank you again for being here. And I hope that you come out to the States to teach a workshop in the future.
I will be in the States next year, and Mexico.
Oh,
And
Mexico, even better.
yeah. I have 3 week-long workshops in Oaxaca, which sold out like in 48 hours. So that's,
Wow, that's
yeah. So, I
amazing.
mean, there's a wait list if anyone wants to go on the wait list.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm really excited about that. So,
Oh,
yeah.
cool. That's going to be amazing. Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much, Tracy. I look forward to staying connected, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
for sure. Thanks, Devin. You too. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye.